Your support helps us share more inspiring stories. The Arizona sun beat down on Miller's Diner parking lot, where 6 Harley-Davidsons sat in a row. Inside, 6 men occupied the corner booth, rough hands wrapped around coffee mugs, weathered faces telling stories of miles traveled. Be my family for a day. A 7-year-old girl walked up to 6 leather-clad bikers and asked something no one saw coming. What happened next left an entire town speechless, but no one imagined what would come next. If you love stories about unexpected heroes and compassion, please like this video and comment below. They were the Ghost Riders, though that name meant nothing anymore. Jake Thornton, 52, stared into his coffee. His grey beard couldn't hide the sadness around his mouth. Widowed 3 years ago, he'd bought the bike thinking freedom would cure grief. It hadn't. Marcus, 41, fiddled with his wedding ring, still wearing it 2 years after his wife left. Tommy, Red, Bear, and Snake completed their circle, each carrying invisible weight. Another Tuesday, Marcus muttered. The door's bell chimed. A small voice cut through. "Excuse me, sirs." 6 heads turned. Ix. A little girl with tangled blonde hair and enormous brown eyes stood beside their table. She wore a grass-stained pink dress and untied sneakers, clutching a worn, stuffed rabbit. "You're not supposed to bother customers, Emma," the waitress called. Emma didn't move. She kept her eyes on Jake, then scanned each face. "I have a question," Emma said. "A really important one." "What kind of question?" Snake asked. Emma took a deep breath. "Could you be my family, just for today?" Silence fell. Marcus's coffee stopped halfway to his lips. Red's fork clattered. Bear's expression crumbled. Jake felt something crack inside. "Sweetie, these men are busy," the waitress said. "Wait," Jake interrupted. "What do you mean?" Emma's eyes filled with hope. "Like pretend you're my uncles. There's Family Appreciation Day at school tomorrow. Everyone brings family. But my parents have to work. They always work. I don't have uncles or aunts or grandparents, so maybe you could be my family, just for one day." "Why us?" Marcus asked. "Because you look sad like me. You look like you need a family too." 7 words that dismantled every wall they'd built. "Where's your mom?" Tommy asked. "Working. She's a nurse, takes extra shifts because Dad's job doesn't pay enough. They fight about money. I'm not supposed to hear, but I do. They love me. They just don't have time. Tomorrow everyone will have families, but I don't want to be alone again." "Again?" Bear asked softly. "I'm alone at lunch because kids say I'm weird. Alone at recess because nobody picks me. Alone after school until dark. I'm really good at being alone." A tear fell. "But just for one day, I want people who show up for me." Jake looked at his brothers, saw Marcus blinking rapidly, Red studying the ceiling, Snake's jaw working, Tommy nodding, Bear pressing his hand to his chest. They were broken men with nothing to offer. "What time tomorrow?" Jake asked. Emma's eyes went wide. 2 o'clock. Riverside Elementary. "But you mean—" "We'd be honored." Jake extended his hand. "I'm Jake. These are your uncles, Marcus, Tommy, Red, Bear, and Snake." Emma threw her arms around Jake's neck. "Thank you. I won't ask for anything else. Just this one day." Over her head, Jake met his brother's eyes. What had they agreed to? Emma pulled back, smiling. "Could you not tell my parents? They worry about strangers." Warning bells should have rung, but 6 men desperately wanted to do one good thing. They exchanged numbers. Tomorrow at 2, Riverside Elementary. Emma hugged each of them before leaving, skipping toward a window booth. The 6 men sat stunned. "We're idiots," Marcus said. "Complete idiots," Red agreed. Jake stared where Emma had stood, feeling something like purpose. "Yeah," he said, "but we're showing up anyway." They didn't know that moment would reveal truths that would shake an entire community. Emma hadn't just asked for family. She'd lit a fuse through secrets. The Ghost Riders thought they were granting a wish. They had no idea they were becoming heroes. The Ghost Riders stayed 3 more hours, nursing cold coffee. What started as a routine stop had become something else entirely. "We need a plan," Marcus said. "We can't just show up without thinking this through." "Why not?" Snake asked. "Schools have paperwork. Tommy said. Background checks. We can't walk into a building full of children without clearing it. Bear shifted uncomfortably. We're strangers. She's 7. Her parents don't know. What kind of men agree to secret meetings with kids? The kind who saw what she saw in us, Jake said quietly. She recognized us. Red nodded. My daughter used to look at me like that, before the drinking. She's 15 now, won't return my calls. Emma's giving us something we don't deserve. A chance to show up. For one day, Marcus added. We grant a wish, and we're gone. But even saying it, Marcus knew it wasn't simple. Jake pulled out his phone. I'll call the school tomorrow. Explain we're Emma's uncle's visiting. We'll need IDs. What if her parents find out? Bear worried. We explain, Jake said. Snake studied Jake. You're different. You got that look. What look? Like you remembered you're alive. Emma had given them roles. Uncle, family, people who showed up. We should get her something, Red suggested. We don't know what she likes, Marcus countered. She likes us, Tommy said. They spent an hour planning. Arrive at 1:45. Wear clean jeans, plain shirts. Follow Emma's lead and leave after. At 7, Emma's phone buzzed. Jake read, Mom's here. See you tomorrow. Thank you for being my family. Emma. 6 men stared, trying to decode how a child's gratitude could feel wonderful and devastating. That night at a cheap motel, none slept well. Jake thought about Catherine, how she'd wanted children. Marcus paced, wedding ring still on. Bear smoked, thinking about his daughter Melissa. Morning came. Over eggs, they reviewed the plan. Tommy had cleared them with the school. At 1:30, 6 motorcycles pulled into Riverside Elementary. Teachers glanced nervously. The Ghost Riders were used to wariness. They signed in, presented IDs. Yes, they were Emma Patterson's uncles. They pinned visitor badges and followed toward the gymnasium. Emma's table sat in the back corner. She stood alone, clutching her rabbit. Then she saw them. Her face transformed like sunrise. She speed-walked with contained excitement. You came, she breathed. You really came. We made a promise, Jake said, crouching. We're here. Emma's eyes filled with tears. Will you see my poster? She led them to her table. Her poster featured stick-figure motorcycles and one girl, my uncles, the Ghost Riders. Beneath, Uncle Jake is brave. Uncle Marcus is funny. Uncle Tommy is smart. Uncle Red is kind. Uncle Bear gives good hugs. Uncle Snake is strong. They showed up when I needed them. 6 men stared at crude drawings, seeing themselves as she believed them to be. It's perfect, Tommy managed. Snake placed one hand on Emma's shoulder. Emma's teacher approached, smiling. You must be Emma's family. I'm Mrs. Peterson. We wouldn't miss it, Jake said. Would you share about yourselves? Emma grabbed Jake's hand, nodding eagerly. When called, 6 bikers and 1 girl stood before the gymnasium. Jake spoke, Marcus added humor, Tommy details, Red warmth, Bear meaning, Snake nodded. Emma beamed. The gym erupted in applause. Everyone saw 6 rough men who'd shown up for a lonely child. After, there was punch and cookies. Emma introduced them to classmates who crowded around. Emma glowed with belonging, but Jake noticed something. Emma's gaze drifted toward a stern man near the exit, a man who watched Emma with an unreadable expression. When Jake looked, the man left. Who was that? Jake asked. Emma's face shuttered. Nobody. Just a teacher, probably. But the fear that flashed told Jake everything. Jake looked at his brothers. They'd noticed too. The event ended at 4. Emma hugged each goodbye. Walking to motorcycles, Jake couldn't shake the image of that man. Anyone else get a weird vibe? Red asked. The guy by the exit, Bear confirmed. Emma was terrified. Could be nothing, Marcus offered. But Snake said, or could be everything. They stood as the sun descended. Purpose, once awakened, doesn't sleep. If Emma needed protection, their role wasn't finished. The Ghost Riders didn't leave town. They couldn't explain this feeling pulling them back. They'd fulfilled their promise. Yet none could shake Emma's fear. We should check on her, Bear said over dinner. How? Marcus challenged. We don't know where she lives. We have her number, Jake reminded them. Only for emergencies, Tommy corrected. They ate in frustrated silence. Jake's phone buzzed at 8:47. They all jumped. "It's Emma," he answered on speaker. Emma's voice came small and frightened. "Uncle Jake, I'm sorry to call. I know I'm not supposed to except for emergencies, but I think maybe this is, except I'm not sure." "Emma, slow down," Jake interrupted. "What's wrong?" "It's just—" A pause. "He was at school today, Mr. Hendricks. I saw him watching me, watching us." "Who's Mr. Hendricks?" "He's my dad's boss. He owns the warehouse. He's really important and everyone's afraid because he fires people and Dad says we need his job." Jake exchanged glances. "Why would his presence scare you?" Another pause. Emma's voice dropped to a whisper. "Because he's the reason I wanted a family for a day. He's the reason I needed you." Jake's stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "I can't tell you. If I tell and someone finds out, Dad will lose his job. We'll lose our house. It'll be my fault." She was crying. "I shouldn't have called. Forget I said anything. Thank you for today. I'm sorry." "Emma, wait." The line went dead. Jake called back. Voicemail. He tried twice more. "Nothing." "Something's wrong," Snake said flatly. "We don't know for certain," Marcus argued weakly. "You believe that?" Red challenged. Marcus shook his head. "No, but I don't know what we're supposed to do." "We give a damn," Bear said, "which is more than most people do." Tommy pulled out his phone. "Hendricks Warehouse and Logistics. Family-owned 40 years. Employs 60. He scrolled. "Owner, Richard Hendricks, 63. Married. Pillar of the community. Major donor to charities, youth programs, schools." "Sounds like a saint," Marcus muttered. "Saints don't make little girls afraid," Jake said. They sat with that truth. Emma's fear had been real. Her desperate call confirmed something was deeply wrong. "We need more information," Tommy said carefully. "Without proof, we could make things worse." "How do we get information?" Bear asked. "We find out more about Hendricks," Jake decided. "Not officially, just watching." "And if we find something," Red pressed, "then we figure out what to do, together." The next morning they split up. Jake and Snake headed to Hendricks' warehouse. Marcus and Red visited diners. Tommy and Bear went to the library. At the warehouse, a receptionist barely looked up. "Applications online only, not hiring. Just thought we'd ask in person," Jake said. The receptionist's expression flickered. "Mr. Hendricks runs a tight operation, very hands-on." Something in her tone pinged Jake's radar. "Sounds dedicated." That's one word for it. Outside, Snake lit a cigarette. That lady was scared. At the diner, Marcus talked to a trucker. "Good outfit to work with." The trucker shrugged. "Hendricks pays on time, but nobody lasts. High turnover, nervous people." "Why nervous?" "Doesn't tolerate mistakes. Place runs like a prison. Not somewhere I'd work." At the library, Tommy found articles about philanthropy, but Bear found archived complaints against Hendricks' warehouse, each withdrawn before court. Each employee left town after. They reconvened, sharing findings. A powerful man who controlled through fear, silenced complaints, employees who disappeared rather than pursue justice. "None of this proves anything about Emma," Marcus pointed out. "No," Jake agreed, "but it paints a picture of a man used to getting away with things." "So what's next?" Tommy asked. Before Jake could answer, his phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Is this Jake Thornton?" A woman's voice, tense and rushed. "Who's asking?" "I'm Sarah Patterson, Emma's mother. She had your number. I need to know who you are and why my daughter has been calling you." Jake's heart hammered as Sarah Patterson's voice cut through the phone. "I need answers. Now." "Mrs. Patterson, I'm Jake Thornton. I met your daughter Emma yesterday at Miller's Diner. She approached our table and asked if we could be her family for a day, for Family Appreciation Day at school." Silence, then, "Oh God, what did you do?" "We said yes. We went to her school today, met her teacher, stayed for the event. Then we left." "You're strangers. 6 men made secret plans with my 7-year-old. Sarah's voice rose. "Do you know how dangerous this could have been?" "You're right. It was unconventional, but Mrs. Patterson, your daughter was so lonely. She told us she's alone at lunch, alone at recess, alone after school. She just wanted one day where people showed up." He heard Sarah's breath hitch. I know she's alone. Her father and I work constantly just to keep the house. Emma pays the price. But that doesn't give you the right. You're right, we should have contacted you first. We made a bad judgment call. I'm sorry. Silence. Emma called you tonight. Why? Jake hesitated. This was the moment. She was scared. She mentioned someone named Hendricks, said he was at school watching her. She said he's the reason she needed a family for a day but wouldn't explain. Then she hung up. Sarah's sharp intake told Jake everything. She knew. Where are you? Sarah asked urgently. At a restaurant downtown. Stay there, I'm coming. Don't leave, don't call Emma, don't do anything. She paused. If you're lying, if you've hurt my daughter, I will destroy you. Understood. 23 minutes later, an exhausted woman in scrubs burst through the door. She spotted them immediately and approached with wary desperation. Mrs. Patterson? Jake stood. Sarah Patterson was probably 35, but looked older, worn by double shifts. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. She studied each of them clinically. You really are just bikers, she said finally. Yes, Mom. May I buy you coffee? Sarah's laugh was bitter. I've had a long 5 years. She sat, accepting coffee Marcus poured. Her hands shook. Tell me exactly what Emma said, Sarah demanded. Everything. Jake recounted the diner encounter, the school event, the phone call, Emma's fear of Hendricks, her cryptic statement, her refusal to explain. Sarah listened, tears streaming silently. When Jake finished, she set down her cup with shaking hands. Richard Hendricks owns the warehouse where my husband David works, Sarah began hollowly. David's been there 8 years. We depend on it completely. About 4 months ago, Emma started having problems. Anxiety, nightmares. Wouldn't tell me why. When did this start? Bear asked gently. 4 months ago. Suddenly she didn't want school. Panic attacks. I thought it was bullying. Her voice broke. 3 weeks ago, Emma finally told me. She said Hendricks had been coming to her school. He's on the school board, donates thousands. He'd pull Emma out of class, take her to empty rooms and... Sarah's face contorted. Touch her. Inappropriate touching. He told her it was their special secret, that if she told, her daddy would lose his job, and it would be her fault. The temperature dropped. 6 men went absolutely still. Did you report it? Marcus asked, deadly calm. I tried. I called the school. They said Hendricks is a pillar of the community. Must be a misunderstanding. I called police. The detective assigned is Hendricks' nephew. Nothing happened. I called Child Protective Services. They interviewed Emma, but said no physical evidence, and Emma was too scared to repeat her story on record. Case closed. What about your husband? Tommy asked. Sarah's face hardened. David doesn't know. If he knew, he'd confront Hendricks and we'd lose everything. Or worse, Hendricks would retaliate. He's powerful. He has connections, money, influence. People who cross him end up ruined. So you did nothing? Red's voice held only sadness. I did everything I could within a system rigged to protect powerful men. Sarah's voice rose. I pulled Emma from programs where he could access her. I requested she never be alone with adults at school. I started dropping her off personally, even though it meant losing work hours. I've been fighting alone, trying to protect my daughter while keeping our lives from collapsing. That's why Emma asked us, Jake said, understanding. She wanted protection. She wanted Hendricks to see she had people who might ask questions. Sarah nodded, wiping her eyes. When Emma told me tonight that 6 bikers came to her school, I was terrified. I thought maybe you were connected to him. But Emma was so happy. She kept saying they really showed up. Ma, I realized you'd given her something I couldn't. The feeling of being protected. Snake spoke. Where's Emma now? Home with David. He thinks she's asleep. Sarah looked at Jake intensely. I don't know why Emma trusted you. But since you care enough to stay, I need to ask something. Anything, Jake said. Will you help us? Will you help me stop Hendricks before he hurts Emma again? I'm out of options, and you 6 strangers are the only people who've shown up for my daughter in 4 months. Her voice cracked. Please, help us. 6 broken men looked at a desperate mother and saw every failure of their past lives reflected back. "We'll help," Jake said, and his brothers nodded. "But we need to be smart. Hendricks is powerful, connected. Going at him directly would be suicide." "So what do we do?" Sarah asked. Tommy leaned forward. "We gather evidence, real, undeniable evidence. We document his patterns, his access to children, and we find others." "Others?" Sarah looked confused. "Predators like Hendricks don't stop with one victim," Marcus said grimly. "If he's doing this to Emma, he's done it before. There are other families, other children. We find them, and we build a case so airtight that even his connections can't save him." Sarah's eyes widened with hope. "How?" "Leave that to us," Bear said. "But we need your cooperation, Emma's testimony, everything you know about his movements. And we need to be prepared for this to get ugly," Red added. "When cornered, powerful men do desperate things. Emma and your family will need protection." Sarah looked at these 6 strangers who'd become her allies. "Why are you doing this? This isn't your problem." Jake thought about Catherine, the years he'd wasted drifting. He thought about Emma's small arms around his neck, her trust offered freely to broken men. "Emma asked us to be her family," Jake said simply. "Family protects each other, that's what we're going to do." The Ghost Riders spent the next week embedded in that small town. They rented a small house, 6 men pooling savings for a purpose that mattered more than the next tank of gas. Tommy coordinated their investigation with precision. Jake and Marcus focused on Hendricks's business. Bear and Red investigated his philanthropic work. Snake and Tommy handled surveillance. What they discovered was chilling. Richard Hendricks was meticulous. His warehouse ran efficiently. His donations were strategic. His public image immaculate. He served on 3 school boards, chaired 2 youth charities. He was photographed with senators and celebrities. He was untouchable. But cracks appeared when they looked closer. Bear found a pattern in archived newspapers. Every few years, a family would suddenly leave town. Middle-class families with young children, usually girls. Departures were always abrupt. Houses sold quickly. No forwarding addresses. Most connected to Hendricks. 14 families in 20 years, Bear reported. All left suddenly. All had daughters between 5 and 10. All connected to Hendricks somehow. "That's not coincidence," Marcus said. "That's systematic predation and silencing." Red contacted a former warehouse employee living 3 towns over, Jim Cooper, who'd quit 5 years ago after his daughter complained about Hendricks. "He paid me $50,000 to sign an NDA and disappear. Said if I ever spoke about his misunderstanding with my daughter, he'd destroy me. I took the money because I had no proof, no allies, and a family to protect. I've hated myself every day since." "Would you testify if you had protection?" Red asked. Jim looked at him for a long moment. "If it would stop him hurting other kids? Yeah, I would." Jake and Marcus befriended warehouse workers through casual conversations. The picture they painted, demanding, controlling, quick to punish. But more disturbing was what they said about his personal life. No close friends despite public popularity. Adult children rarely visited. His wife seemed more employee than partner, always careful, always watchful. "She's afraid of him," one worker confided after his 4th beer. "Everyone's afraid. He knows things about people, their secrets, their mistakes. He collects leverage. Cross him, and suddenly your DUI from 10 years ago is front-page news. Or your business loses permits, or your kids don't get into college. He owns this town, but owning a town required maintenance, and maintenance required money, lots of it." Tommy, digging through public records, found the thread. His warehouse reported $3 million profit last year, but his personal spending suggests income closer to $10 million. Where's the extra $7 million? "Money laundering?" Marcus suggested. "Or blackmail," Jake said. "He's been paying off families for decades. Maybe he's also collecting from people who can't afford to leave or fight back." Snake, conducting surveillance, provided the final piece. He visits a storage facility every Thursday night, stays 30 minutes. Always alone, always at exactly 11 p.m. "What's in the storage unit?" Bear asked. "That," Snake said, is what we need to find out. They brought findings to Sarah during a tense meeting. She listened, face growing paler with each revelation. 14 families, she whispered, 14 little girls, and no one stopped him. We are going to stop him now, Jake said, but we need something concrete. The storage unit might have it. That's breaking and entering, Sarah pointed out. It is, Tommy agreed, which is why we're not asking permission. If we find anything, we'll get it to authorities who can't be bought. FBI, state police, media, someone beyond his reach. Sarah looked at these 6 men. What happens if you're caught? Then we're caught, Marcus said simply. But Emma's worth the risk. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. I don't know how to thank you. Help Emma heal, Bear said quietly. That's thanks enough. Thursday at 10:30 p.m. the Ghost Riders positioned themselves near the storage facility. They'd scouted it earlier. High-end, climate-controlled security cameras, keycard access. Hendrix's unit was second floor, away from the main office. At 10:58, Hendrix's Mercedes pulled in. He exited alone, looking around carefully before entering. Through night vision binoculars, they watched him climb stairs and enter Unit 247. We've got maybe 25 minutes, Tommy whispered. Snake positioned at the entrance with a legitimate rental as cover would alert them if Hendrix left early. At 11:15, Jake and Marcus approached. Tommy had disabled the camera for Unit 247 earlier. Using lock-picking skills from a misspent youth, Marcus had the door open in 90 seconds. Inside, they found hell documented. Filing cabinets lined one wall, each drawer labeled with years. Photographs covered another wall. Surveillance photos of children at schools, playgrounds, centers. A locked safe sat in the corner, and on a desk, a computer. Jesus Christ, Marcus breathed. Jake photographed everything. Drawer labels, 2003, 2005, 2006, 2008, up to present. He opened the most recent drawer and found files, each labeled with a name. Emma's name was there, containing photographs of her at school, notes about her schedule, her parents' work hours, copies of her report cards. He's been stalking her for months, Jake said, voice shaking with rage. This is a hunting log. Marcus photographed the surveillance wall. Dozens of children, years of predation documented like trophies. They had 15 minutes. Jake photographed files. Marcus worked on the computer, inserting a USB to copy the hard drive, a process needing 8 minutes they might not have. At 11:24, Snake's message. He's leaving early, 2 minutes out. We're not done, Marcus said, watching the progress bar. We have to go, Jake insisted. 60 more seconds. They heard footsteps. Close, getting closer. Now, Marcus. Marcus grabbed the USB at 92%, and they slipped out, pulling the door shut as Hendrix rounded the corner. They ducked into a stairwell, hearts hammering, listening to Hendrix enter his unit. For 3 minutes, nothing. Then Hendrix's voice, angry, on the phone. The camera's out. Someone's been here. I want security footage from the parking lot. Now. Move, Jake whispered, and they descended quickly, exiting through a side door to where motorcycles waited. They'd gotten most of it. Photographs, files, partial computer data. Enough to prove Hendrix wasn't just a predator, but an organized hunter documenting crimes for decades. But Hendrix now knew someone was investigating. The clock had started ticking. Back at their house, they reviewed what they'd captured. It was damning, dozens of victims, meticulous records, evidence that would destroy Hendrix's image, but it was illegally obtained, which meant strategic use. We need to find one of these families willing to come forward, Tommy said. Someone whose testimony can be backed by what we found without admitting how. And we need to move fast, Red added. Hendrix knows someone's onto him. He'll either run or retaliate. He'll retaliate, Bear said grimly. Men like him don't run. Jake looked at photographs. Emma's face, among dozens of others. Then we hit first. Tomorrow, we contact the FBI. We find these families. We go to every news outlet if we have to. We make enough noise that he can't silence us all. Friday morning arrived with impending confrontation. The Ghost Riders had 48 hours to execute their plan before Hendricks could mobilize resources. They split into teams. Bear and Red drove to Jim Cooper's town with storage unit evidence. When Jim saw the photographs, his face crumbled. His daughter Katie was there, documented in Hendricks's hunting log. "I'll testify," Jim said immediately. "No more running, no more silence." They found 3 more families by noon, scattered across Arizona, all paid off and relocated, all living with guilt and fear. Each agreed to come forward when shown the evidence. Jake and Marcus met with FBI agent Sandra Pierce in Phoenix. She listened to their story, reviewed their evidence, and her expression grew darker. "This is extensive predation," Agent Pierce said, "but you obtained this illegally, which complicates prosecution." "We have victims willing to testify," Jake countered. "What we found just proves there's a pattern worth investigating officially." Pierce nodded slowly. "I can open an investigation based on families coming forward. But it'll take time. Warrants, interviews, building a case. Weeks, maybe months." "We don't have months," Marcus said urgently. "Hendricks knows he's compromised. He'll flee or eliminate witnesses." "Then I need one of those victims to file an official complaint today," Pierce said. "Someone currently in his crosshairs willing to go on record. That gives me cause for immediate action." Jake called Sarah. "We need Emma to give an official statement to the FBI. Today. It's the only way to protect her." Sarah's voice shook. "She's terrified. She thinks it's her fault." "Sarah, doing nothing destroys your family. Hendricks destroys your family. This gives Emma her power back. This makes her a survivor." Silence. Then, "I'll bring her." "Where?" By 3 p.m., Sarah and Emma sat in Agent Pierce's Phoenix office. Emma clutched her rabbit, her small voice barely audible as she recounted months of abuse. Sarah held her hand throughout, tears streaming. Pierce was gentle but thorough, documenting everything. When Emma finished, Pierce knelt before her. "Emma, you are the bravest person I've met. What you just did will protect so many other kids. I promise we're going to stop Mr. Hendricks." "You really promise?" Emma asked desperately. "I really promise?" With Emma's statement, Pierce mobilized. By 6 p.m., federal warrants were issued. The operation would execute at dawn. Hendricks's home, warehouse, storage unit, all secured before he could destroy evidence. But Hendricks had spent decades staying ahead. At 7:15 p.m., as the Ghost Riders returned to their house with Emma and Sarah for protective custody, they found David Patterson waiting, confused and angry. "Sarah, what's going on?" David demanded. "My boss called, said FBI agents were asking questions. He's threatening to fire everyone unless someone tells him who's talking. I come home early, and you're gone. Emma's gone. Now I find you here with 6 bikers I've never met. Explain." Sarah told her husband everything. David's face cycled through disbelief, horror, rage, and devastation. "Why didn't you tell me?" David whispered. "Because I knew you'd confront him, and we'd lose everything." "Emma is everything." David's voice broke. "Our daughter was being hurt, and you didn't trust me." "I was trying to protect us all," Sarah said desperately. David turned to Jake. "And who are you?" "We're the people who showed up when Emma asked for help," Jake said quietly. "We're the ones who believed her when others didn't." David stared at these 6 strangers. "The FBI is really coming for Hendricks?" "At dawn," Marcus confirmed. "Good," David said flatly. "I hope they bury him." At 11:43 p.m., Jake's phone rang. Unknown number. "Mr. Thornton." Hendricks's voice was smooth, controlled, dangerous. "We've never been formally introduced, but I understand you've taken an unusual interest in my life." Jake's blood ran cold. "How did you get this number?" "I have resources. More importantly, I have information. I know Marcus Reeves defaulted on a business loan. Fraud charges dropped, but evidence still exists. I know Thomas Riggs failed a background check for custody due to DUI. Everyone has vulnerabilities. If this investigation proceeds, I will dedicate considerable resources to destroying you and your friends. Is Emma Patterson really worth that?" Jake looked across the room at Emma, asleep on the couch with her rabbit. He looked at Sarah and David. He looked at his brothers. Yes, Jake said simply. She is. Do your worst. We're not backing down. Then you've made a grave mistake. Hendricks hung up. The night passed with the Ghost Riders maintaining watch. At 5:47 a.m., Agent Pierce called. We're executing warrants in 10 minutes. Stay where you are. At 7:32 a.m., Pierce called again. We have Hendricks in custody, and the evidence in that storage unit, it's worse than we thought. Documentation of 53 potential victims over 22 years. Financial records of blackmail payments, videos. This is going to be one of the largest child predation cases in Arizona history. Relief flooded through them. Emma stirred, waking. Sarah pulled her close, whispering, "It's over, baby. You're safe." Over following weeks, everything changed. Hendricks's arrest made national news. Families came forward from 3 states. The scope of his predation was staggering. Emma began therapy, slowly rebuilding trust. Sarah and David started counseling. David found new work with a company whose owner wanted to support victims' families. The Ghost Riders stayed in town, attending every court hearing, standing visible reminders that Emma had protectors. In the end, Hendricks was sentenced to 47 years. On sentencing day, Emma asked to speak. 7-year-old Emma Patterson stood at the microphone and said, "Mr. Hendricks told me nobody would believe me. He was almost right, but my uncles believed me. They showed up when I needed them. That's what family does." She looked at the Ghost Riders. "Thank you for being my family." 6 grown men wept openly. After the trial, they prepared to leave town. Saying goodbye to Emma was harder than anticipated. "Are you coming back?" Emma asked, hugging Jake tightly. "We'll visit," Jake promised, "and you can call any time. But you're leaving. Lord, the road is where we live, sweetheart, but you're in our hearts forever." Emma studied his face seriously. "You're not sad anymore. Not like when I first met you." Jake realized she was right. The hollow ache had eased. Purpose had filled it. "Neither are you," Jake said softly. Emma smiled genuinely, and it was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. The Ghost Riders rode out on a clear Arizona morning, 6 men forever changed by one girl's impossible request. They'd come as strangers and left as heroes, not because they'd defeated a monster, but because they'd shown up when a child asked them to care. Jake's phone buzzed a week later, a text from Emma. "I made the soccer team. I'm not alone at recess anymore. Thank you for teaching me that family isn't who you're born with. It's who shows up." He showed the message to his brothers at a diner in New Mexico. They smiled, nodded, and returned to their coffee. 6 men still searching for purpose on endless highways, but no longer running from themselves. They'd learned that redemption doesn't require perfection, just presence. That broken people can still be heroes. That showing up is sometimes the most powerful thing you can do. And somewhere in Arizona, a little girl slept peacefully, no longer afraid, surrounded by family, both the one she was born into and the one she chose.